Hello, party people, and welcome to Office Hours. I'm Brent Ozar, a guy who works a lot with Microsoft SQL Server. I'm a consultant and trainer. I also have Invisalign braces in, if you haven't seen the stream recently, so I've got a little bit of a lisp. Makes it a little bit complicated when I say SQL Server. I have to kind of concentrate when I think about that. And finally, my Black Friday sale for the month of November is done. And now I can kind of chill out for a little while. I've been going and working absolutely frantically for the last month, working with customer support questions, prepping blog posts, doing all kinds of live classes for free. And now I get to sit back and coast back a little bit for the holidays. I teach a mastering index tuning class next week. I teach two of them, actually. I teach one in European time zones and then another one in American time zones. But for at least a couple of days, I get to veg out and chill out a little bit. And then also, I just closed on my condo in Mexico. So I get to, after the Mastering Index Tuning class closes up shop, I'm going to fly down to Mexico and spend a few days down there, or actually a few weeks down there in Mexico on the ocean, watching the whales, watching baby sea turtles hatch and help them get to sea for the first time. It's just an absolutely gorgeous place down there. So let's go through some of your questions. I don't expect this one to be too interactive. There's only like a dozen of you in here tonight. I say tonight, it's like 4 p.m. Pacific time. This wasn't a scheduled stream. This is one of those where I'm just still working up my camera setup for the new MacBook Pro laptop. So I'm just going live whenever it works for me to test out some of my camera gear. So let's go see what questions y'all have here. So the highest rated question over there on PullGab is from Pete Donnelly. Pete says, "Hi Brent, I have a 7 terabyte database and the largest table, just the one table by itself, is 2 terabytes. It's got 6 indexes and 6 statistics." Yeah, that's true. Windraven, that's true. It has 42 WA sys statistics. Okay, so what that means is when you have users who query any column, even if they only query that column just one time, SQL Server will automatically add system-created statistics to that column. And they start with WA sys. He says, "We truncate this table every January the 1st to start the new year with an empty table. Should I drop the WA statistics when I truncate the table?" So you could, and it doesn't hurt anything. I'd be completely fine with doing it. You're probably not going to see a huge bang for the buck, though, because through the course of the year, all it takes is one person to query a column, and the WA sys stat will come right back. Well, thank you. I appreciate the thanks there. Came for the roasts. I think I only took a quick glance at the questions. This is one of the things that I like about PullGab is that people upvote questions that are good. And so then that way it just lets the cream rise to the top as opposed to me having to deal with every single little question that comes through. It's so much more fun. Plus, now that I'm only doing them on Twitch, I only do the live ones on Twitch. I don't do the live ones on YouTube. That kind of filters out the terrible questions. People on Twitch are really smart. Oh, that reminds me, when I do a wrap up at the end after the SQL Server questions, remind me, I want to talk about the game that I want to stream. I'm going to try something different and try streaming a game here in a while. Not today, but a game that I've been playing a lot. Next up, LifelessDBA says, "Hi Brent, suppose SQL Server 2022, it's such an odd release name to say, 2022, it's 2020, weird. General availability is available now. Is there any kind of feature or enhancement, howdy, that you convincing you to think about migrating to 2022? Oh, that's a really good question. What would be in there that I would migrate for? Okay, so there's one that you can fail back and forth between the cloud. That you can fail back and forth between on-premises, always-on availability groups versus Azure managed instances up in the cloud. And I think that would make disaster recovery a lot more easy to achieve. Now, granted, it is just the ease of your wallet. Like, you have to actually pay for the Azure Managed Instance, and Azure Managed Instances are not what we call cheap. They're what we call expensive, especially when you talk about the kind of workload that would be able to keep up with production. But you could always start with a real low-powered managed instance and then gradually transition up if you had to fail over to it. But in the past, moving to Azure SQL DB or managed instances has been a one-way trip, like Hotel California. You check in, but your data checks in, but it does not check back out. That wasn't very compelling, but if we can fail over back and forth, suddenly that's much more compelling because you can use it temporarily for DR. The other thing that I think is going to be a killer feature, and this is going to sound kind of backwards, but extended support and mainstream support are running out faster than you would think for stuff like 2014, 16, and 17. 2016, if I remember right, managed, 2016 mainstream support ends next year, if I remember right, ends in 2022. Nani, check how to ask a question up there at the top of the page. So that I think is going to be one of the interesting upgrade drives, is that people I don't think understand how quickly 2016's mainstream support and 2017's mainstream support ends. It's coming way quick. Next up, talking about support timelines, 2008 R2 people asks, "Hi Brent, my company is still using SQL Server 2008 R2, running out like Taco Bell at 2 p.m. Man, or 2 a.m. Taco Bell sounds really good. It's been a long time since I've had like trashy Mexican. Oh man, Richie, now you totally got me thinking about, I am kind of pissed that Taco Bell stopped doing the 7-layer burrito, because the 7-layer burrito was totally my jam. I loved the 7-layer burrito. I don't know if it was vegetarian or not, but dang, that thing was good. Not that I'm vegetarian, but so 2008 R2 people, I'm totally going to get Taco Bell because it's early enough. It's only like 4 p.m. here. I could totally do taco. There's a potato soft taco. Are you kidding me? Wow. That, of course, I wonder if they call it Papa's. Please tell me that the potato soft taco is not French fries wrapped in a flour tortilla, because that would be disgusting. Never change. It's absolutely true. Oh, I crave Taco Bell just as much as I do A by Jose Andres. Oh, Taco Bell. Oh, I forgot about the Cinnabon bites. Oh, yeah. As long as I'm going to be trashy, well, here I am drinking champagne, and I'm like, what sounds really good is Taco Bell. But it's true, though. Oh. Taco Bell gets me. So 2008 R2 people says, "Hi Brent, my company is still using 2008 R2, which will be end of support soon." What world are you living in? It was out of support years ago. Not even like recently. 2012 is out of support. Is it better to upgrade to the newer version or stay at 2008 R2? Technically, our apps are running smoothly in 2008 R2. Which version do we suggest to upgrade to if we must? So my thing is always, the way that I explain it to bosses is, if Microsoft refuses to answer the phone if we have a problem, then it's not safe to run in production. If Microsoft, the people who made the thing, if they refuse to pick up the call, we're going to be in trouble when we do eventually hit a problem. So I'll tell you a story of a friend of mine who hit a problem. A friend of mine worked for a government agency, and all of a sudden, she's a database administrator, and all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, she gets a call from one of her end users who says, "Hey, the accounting SQL server is down. Can you take a look?" And she's like, "What, accounting SQL server? Give me the name." And she'd never heard of this name before. And she starts digging around trying to figure out what this SQL server is. Never heard of it. There's no backups. And eventually comes to find out that it lives in the accounting area, that somewhere along the line, so-and-so had installed it when they still worked here in order to support something mission critical. And she's like, "Well, I don't understand where this is at, and this is not in our data center." And they said, no, it's somewhere in the accounting department. And they send people down to the accounting department, and eventually they figure out that it's where this guy's desk used to be. And where his desk used to be, there used to be a closet. They go tracing a network cable that comes out of one of the walls, and it goes into a wall where a door used to be to get into his closet. They had to break this open. It had been drywalled over because they didn't think anybody was still using this closet. And there was a server hidden back behind what used to be a door and was now just a wall. And this poor SQL server running SQL Server 7 had eventually crashed. The hard drives had run into problems. And they needed to call Microsoft for support. And they're like, hello, Microsoft, we're having this problem with SQL Server 7. Hello, Microsoft. If you can't call Microsoft when the thing dies, what's the point of running that production server? If your business, like as what's happening now in 2008 R2, if the business says, we don't care if you can call Microsoft for support or not, it's your job, then you need to go find a new job. And I am not even joking. Because although a lot of your skills are still going to be applicable if you jump over to a newer shop, your odds of getting another job are diminishing with every passing year. That's like Richie Joris here on the call or on the stream. Joris has only ever worked with COBOL. That's the only thing that he's ever worked with. So I was able to get him for like minimum wage. When Richie wants to go out to restaurants, like Taco Bell is a high-end restaurant for Richie. Now on the downside, everything that we build is in COBOL. But on the good side, I mean, I get it done really inexpensively. That is just such a total vicious lie. Now, I'm like the opposite of that. I'm like, we should build in the brand new awesome thing. Made a run for the border. That's really good. That's a good joke right there. That is really good. Made a run for the border. That happened in my office. Yes. Still in here. So next up we have Mehdi. Mehdi asks, hi Brent, how does a query optimizer calculate the estimated number of rows when there are clustered index seeks and residual predicates in the actual execution plan? Okay, Mehdi, I happen to know that name. I think you've been to a lot of my streams lately. What you want to do is go to our YouTube channel, go to YouTube. And then once you go to YouTube, I've lost you, right? You're going to be clicking on cat videos and all kinds of stuff. What do you know about the Trushit? Which ties in with our Taco Bell joke. Everything's related. It all comes back to the same thing. And COBOL, being in you should, so many good jokes there. Sylvester Stallone in that movie is fantastic. So go to our YouTube channel, and what that discussion right there is exactly what it's like when you go to youtube.com. Go to youtube.com, search for Brent Ozar, go to our YouTube channel, and scroll down. And I say our YouTube channel because other people have videos on there. Like if you scroll down and go to statistics, there's a section on statistics that's got like a 10-hour video course by Doug Lane, and it's totally free, and it explains how SQL Server uses statistics in order to come up with cardinality estimates. Really useful, easy stuff. And we make it available for free because Doug put a ton of work into it. It's a really great starting point when you just get started, kind of like my How to Think Like the Engine class. Next up, BiggieDB says, hello, Brent and all the party people, which reminds me that I'm not drinking enough of my champagne. Can you ever really drink enough champagne? Yes, I suppose you can. It says, I have a CTE that's finding all the parent elements. Think all of the managers, number of levels is unknown. Then I noticed that it gets wildly incorrect estimations as a CTE. Is there any better way to write a query like this? Well, Biggie, I want you to step up to your own part of the question right here. Pull my finger. See where my finger is pointing? Where you said the number of levels is unknown? Say that real slow to yourself. Say it out loud. Doesn't matter that you're on a crowded train. If you don't know the number of levels, how is SQL Server supposed to? What do you think? It's magic? It's magic? No, not at all. If you don't know, there's obviously no way that SQL Server can know. How the hell is that fair? In fair, I do this all the time with users where they'll show me a query. Ooh. They'll show me a query and we'll be like, I don't understand why estimation is so bad. And I'm like, okay, so you tell me, looking at this query, how many rows do you think are going to come out of this table? And they're like, oh, I have no idea. Well, how do you think SQL Server is going to know? Oh, statistics. It's not magic. I mean, if things like there's an unknown number of levels, there's no way in hell SQL Server can figure it out. So here's a bigger thing that you want to think about. If the number of rows that come out of that CTE is very influential as opposed to, or as for what happens to the rest of the things in the plan, then go dump the contents of the CTE to a table first. Not a permanent table, but just like a temp table. Instead of using it as a CTE, go dump the whole thing into a temp table, then use the contents of that temp table to influence the rest of your query, and SQL Server will have better estimates. Next up, Trushit says, this question is more about regarding the consulting career. Senor Surly Dev, welcome, Senor Surly Dev. This question is more regarding the consulting career. If you were to choose a technology or tool to specialize, which one would that be so that you could grow your career for the next decade or so? Does Power BI seem like a good tool to specialize in? You know what I was reading 2-3 days ago? There's this woman on TikTok and Instagram called Miss Excel. Miss Excel started her career about a year and a half ago. And today, Miss Excel makes 6 figures a month, US dollars, meaning she makes over $100,000 a month selling training for Excel. Now, the Excel market is giant. The Power BI market isn't as big, but it comes into, do you think that Power BI is going to approach the size of Excel? I don't think it's going to in the next like 3 or 4 years, but I think that there are going to be more people who need Power BI training than who need SQL Server training. But here's the catch. I cut my finger on a cracker box today. It was a soda box. I had like a 12-pack of soda, and I was opening it up in a hurry, trying to get all the cans into the fridge. I don't know why I was in a hurry. I don't have anything going on in my life. But where was I? So but I said, but here's the thing. Oh, so when you build Power BI training, you have to keep an eye that you have to keep an eye opening boxes. You have to keep an eye that whatever training you build has an expiration date in. The faster that Microsoft changes the product, the faster your course will expire. So Miss Excel can make a fortune by building more and more courses because Excel at its core doesn't really change all that often. VLOOKUP has sucked like a Dyson vacuum cleaner for probably 20 years. Power BI, the problems are going to be different every single year. So just be aware that you may not be able to build training, but you sure as heck will be able to build consulting. I just don't know. I'm not quite sure how much you'll be able to make doing Power BI consulting because Power BI is relatively inexpensive. If you're going to try to do consulting, make sure you specialize on the back end, not the front end. Because in the front end, it's essentially Excel. You need a really big user base. People don't hire Excel consultants as often as they might hire database consultants. So let's take a break for this week's sponsor. And this week's sponsor is Redgate. Redgate's running a database state of the database monitoring report. And they have put together the opinions of over 2,500 database professionals who talk about the problems that they run into in production, the kinds of instances that they need to monitor, how they go about monitoring it. So if you want to figure out what your peers are doing in order to monitor SQL Server, Postgres, MySQL, whatever, you can download a totally free report from Redgate over at brentozar.com/go/report. So thank you, Redgate, for sponsoring this week on the blog and on the live streams as well. I know y'all, for those of you who've been watching the free classes that I've done over the past month, you're so used to me shilling for Black Friday that this is probably a total and complete surprise. I'm going to go close my blinds here because I have the sun coming in from this side of the apartment. It's not actually direct sun. There's an all-glass high-rise over there really close to me, and whenever they... oh, now I got to brighten up my lights in here. Whenever the sun goes down, then immediately... Oh, I got to open it up a little bit. When the sun starts to go down, the glances right off of the high rise right next to me or a couple blocks over and blinds me right in the eyes. All right, there we go. So there's thanks again to Redgate at brentozar.com/go/report. Oh man, come on, that's not right. I accidentally clicked the button that started also with music there as well. During the breaks, Early Dev said, my Dyson DC04 is 20 years old. I recently replaced the motor and brush bar. It's still sucking like Excel's VLOOKUP command. I just switched to back over to an iRobot, one of the little automated vacuums that goes around all over to the floors. Man, the iRobot, it just like gets bumped at specific places every time. It just keeps trying to climb up and hump my entryway stool. I have a stool in the entryway where I go put my shoes on, and this thing the Dyson just tries to, or the iRobot tries to hump it every time, climb up the legs. It's really weird. It's a good looking stool, but not that good looking. Paul Muggs asks, what would you suggest as a broad approach to version control for tables and views? Everyone just points me towards GitHub, but I struggle to see how this translates to what me and the team do in SSMS. So version control with databases has sucked for decades, and it just isn't getting a whole lot better. When people point you to GitHub, they're pointing you at the place where you store things, but not how you get them in there. The only company that I know that's actively doing work on this stuff these days is Redgate. So if you search for Redgate SQL source control, and no affiliation that they're doing the ads this week. If there was another company, I would totally tell you. But as far as I know, they're the only ones who are actively... That's absolutely true. The Redgate is, as far as I know, the only company that's actually actively trying to solve that problem. So I would go look at their SQL source control product. Everything about this market really does suck. It is a real serious pain, and there's no silver bullet answer. Even Redgate's solution is, it's not like you can just click it, set it, and forget it. It's more complicated than that. Which, I mean, to be fair, is the same thing with Visual Studio, right? You can't just say, use GitHub, and that's the end of it. I mean, there's like merge conflicts. Oh my God, it's a total pain in the rear. Stefano asks, Brent, is that like iRobot? So Starlight, the problem with that is things like indexes, views, as you go to create those things outside of Visual Studio, which you're going to want to do, create indexes outside of there, it's going to be pretty terrible. Brent, about blob out of the database. When people ask me, how do I make a database go faster, and they're using it as a file server, I'm always like, yo, stop spending $2,000 to $7,000 US on your file server. It doesn't make sense. Go use a file system. That's what they're for. It says, I've got a 5 terabyte database with blobs inside, always on availability group replication, moving documents outside. How do you guarantee consistency between metadata and the file system? Oh, it's really easy. Consider the database as a point of time truth that may need to be rewound. Whenever you insert new versions of a file, you're inserting new rows into a table that tracks the files. That always gets inserts. Then over on the file system, you're always saving new versions of the files. If for some reason you need to rewind the database, that's okay. You can. Because if you rewind the database, it just doesn't know about these extra files that you put in the file system. The file system will never be rewound. You want to use things like storage snapshots and replication to make sure that every file that gets added is only inserted, it's never changed, but it's always rolling forward. That's really easy for file systems. Windows admins and Linux admins have been doing that for decades, whereas I think they don't have to use stuff like always-on availability groups. These kinds of things are built into file systems these days. So unfortunately, we don't have that luxury as database administrators. We often have to roll back, but it's okay if you roll back as long as there's just extra files on the file system that the file system didn't know about, or that the database doesn't know about. HD asks, there are so many valuable TSQL suggestions and feedback from the TSQL users on the user voice forum. Oh my goodness. I just need a drink now before I read the rest of this question. It says Microsoft doesn't act on it. Does Microsoft really read and respect the user voice? Or is it there for the name's sake? No, boy, have I got bad news for you. So I don't know, 10 years ago, Microsoft had a site called Connect, and they weren't able to get it GDPR compliant. So when GDPR came around, they shot that, and they dragged that site out to the back and shot it it went to a farm upstate. That's what I'm trying to say. Then they brought out another site, was like user voice based or something. Now they took that up to a farm upstate. They have also dumped that site and started again from scratch. If they really gave a damn about feedback, they would even track it in a place where they would always add to it and not just throw a hand grenade into it, nuke it from orbit periodically from time to time. I get that it's really hard. It's a hard problem to solve, managing user feedback, when there are a lot of people and no barrier to entry. Everybody's like, I want a pony. I believe that my SQL Server should be compatible with Apple M1 processors. You know, people will type anything out there when feedback is free, and there's no correlation to how much money SQL Server Microsoft would actually make from implementing those improvements. They don't have something like PollGab where people can just upvote questions, and then I can only take advantage of the highest rated ones. It's a shame that they don't. I wish that they had something like a PollGab for money, or a PollGab with money, or like Kickstarter, where people could lay down their money to get a feature implemented. But let's be real, how many of us would actually lay down money for our TSQL improvements? For most of us, we've never spent $1 on SQL Server as long as we've lived. We just use it because our companies use it. So it's not like we really influence that much in terms of purchasing. So the thing that I would say is I really wouldn't put any effort into the feedback request sites anymore. I don't personally. I just view it as a site where everybody says they want a pony. So. Next up, Dr. Dolittle asks, Dear Dr. Ozar, yeah, exactly. Forrest McDaniel says, in other words, when you find a bug, tweet it to embarrass Microsoft. Don't post it to the site. Or even better, write blog posts about it and YouTube videos. I am not even joking, Forrest. So I had a bug in Visual Studio. It's funny. It's like frozen the URL. Let me see if I can refresh that and get that to... Oh, where did the thing go? There's the button to refresh it. I had a bug in Visual Studio and purchasing Visual Studio. I recorded a YouTube video about it, and within a day, I had an email back from Microsoft saying, we're sorry that we couldn't take your money in order to do Visual Studio. We'll just give you Visual Studio for free. And I was like, okay, well, that kind of works. So back to Dr. Dolittle. Dr. Dolittle says, Dear Dr. Ozar, can my friend install SQL Server Developer Edition for his dev and test servers, or are there any gotchas? At the moment, he uses Enterprise Edition on both servers. Oh my God. Oh my God. Enterprise Edition is $7,000 US per core. Per core. Licensing my laptop would be $70,000. Tell your friend to burn any evidence of what he ever did. And if it's his dev and test type stuff, go put Development Edition on there. That's terrifying. That's absolutely nuts. Windraven says, I want to work for a company that can spend $7,000 a core on developers. No, Windraven, you don't, because I'll tell you a story, or I'll tell you what happens as a consultant. Let me tell you how this really works. There are three different kinds of companies. One kind of company loves to spend money on hardware. One kind of company loves to spend money on software. And one kind of company loves to spend money on people. And it's really rare to find somebody who wants to spend money on all of them. So you would think that it would be really cool to work for the kind of company that spends a lot of money on software. But here's what really ends up happening with that. There's one poor database administrator stuck behind a monitor trying to manage 1,000 SQL servers. And when they complain about being overworked, their manager is like, well, can I get you some software? Is there an application that would help with that? Maybe can we get you another monitoring tool? Maybe could you get some dbatools.io in there? Could you slap some DevOps on it? Maybe. They're like just shoveling software at them. And of course, software doesn't manage itself. Software is even harder. So the poor database administrator is now even more overworked and overwhelmed. Another example of that I've also seen with the companies that spend money on people. I've seen companies where they bring me in and they're like, yes, we're having performance problems. And I go in and take a look at it. And the server's like an Etch-a-Sketch. It's got like 6 CPU cores. It's got 16 gigs of RAM. They're trying to host a 5 terabyte data warehouse on it. Now, I can't figure out why we have problems. And there's a horde of people hovering around this SQL server. All these people are making like $100,000 a year and up. There are consultants involved with it. They're all waving wands over it. And I'm like, come on, you got a whole bunch of highly paid people hovering around an Etch-a-Sketch. And they're like, yeah, that's why we brought you in. I'm like, go get a bigger laptop. You know, a bigger laptop would be better than the stuff that we are dealing with here. And thankfully, I weed a lot of that stuff out in my sales process where I'm like, look, just go put, twice the CPU power and 64 gigs of RAM in there. And if it doesn't solve the problem, call me back. But otherwise it's cheaper than calling me in. So that tends to weed a lot of that out. But I still end up seeing that. And then we'll take one more. Before we start talking about video games. Chris says, I've been asked to look at a database in SQL Server 2008 R2. What is this? The SQL Server 2008 R2 edition of the webcast? And you see what I immediately, by like reflex, I had to go and reach for the champagne. Not to celebrate. There's a quote that people drink champagne only on 2 occasions, when they're happy and when they're sad. When they're happy, they drink champagne, and when they're sad, they also drink champagne. In this instance, I'm sad. So I've been asked to look at a database on a SQL Server 2008 R2. No diagrams or documentation. Chris, they're on a 13-year-old version of SQL, 2008 R2, like a 10-year-old version of SQL Server that's been out of support for like years, and you're surprised that they don't have documentation? Chris, I bet they never even bought the licensing. I bet they pirated that. I bet that they bought like a 2-core license or, 1-socket license for 2008 R2. And I bet they've got way more power in there now and they never bothered to true up. Or it was some employee downloaded it off of MSDN and they never actually paid for it. Is it possible they're cheap, Chris? That's what I'm trying to say. That is why they hired you. No diagrams or documentation. Is it possible at all to work out what the relationships could be between the tables? There are roughly 500 of these things. So when someone asks me to take a look, I don't look at what the relationships are between the tables because there's very little value in that. Instead, ask to see the code that they're struggling with. What is it that's not fast enough, that's not reliable enough, and look at the stuff that's in that code not the tables. If you have to look at the tables, use spblitz_index sort order equals, or here, I'll type it out as a question so that I can show it up on the screen. Whoops, my keyboard's been inactive. spblitz_index get all databases equals 1, mode equals 2, sort order equals size. So I'll put that in the just in the pop-up there so that y'all can see it. spblitz_index get all databases equals 1, self-explanatory. Mode equals 2 means give me an Excel-friendly inventory of all the database or of all the indexes that exist on the system. Sort order equals size means show me the largest indexes first. Indexes also means tables. The clustered index or the heap is also included in that list. So then you'll be able to see what the largest objects are, and that'll help you prioritize what you probably want to look at first. Because if they have 500 tables, probably the vast majority of them are really small, and you don't really give a rip about them, that they're easy to deal with. So hopefully that gets you started if you had to analyze the tables, but I just go analyzing the code instead first. All right, so now let's talk about games. So I have wanted to stream a game for quite a while. And for a while, I thought it was going to be Among Us. Exactly, yes. I thought I was going to do Among Us first because I really find that game compelling. I have actually never played it. I've only watched other people play it on Twitch, but it looks fun as all get out. But a friend of mine was hanging out with me recently and played a lot of Dead by Daylight. So Dead by Daylight is it's called an asymmetrical game where there are 4 people trying to survive and there's one killer, and they each have different strengths and capabilities. Basically, it's the survivor's goal to get out of the environment, and it's the killer's job. Yeah, it's the killer's job to make sure that they don't get out of the environment. And I love, well, I have a lot of really fun friends that I know. Richie's a good example, Joris on here. I have a lot of really fun friends in the SQL Server community who play a lot of stuff. After all, we're here on Twitch, right? And which means that some of y'all at least want to watch streaming games. I enjoy that kind of thing. Which reminds me that I'm also working on a new set of overlays that'll take my streams again to a much better level. I feel happy with it in terms of the SQL Server community. There just aren't a lot of people doing it, but I'm always looking at game streamers and I'm like, I should be able to take this up to the next level. Not just drinking champagne. But I think I might try playing Dead by Daylight. And I don't know that there are other people in the SQL Server community who play. If you play, let me know. Go to brentozar.com and click contact up at the top and tell me what your Steam username is, and I'll go add you on Steam, and then that way we can put together, we'll maybe figure out a date and time where we can where people are available to play. But I think it would be kind of funny to stream on Twitch while I play that. I've got the hardware to do it. Gabriel says my son plays it a lot. I can see why. It's no hot tub, please. I promise you that. Richie, that's so funny because it would be funny that I love hot tubs, but not that. Oh, you've enjoyed DBD. See, I like it. I thoroughly enjoy it. I suck at video games, but I have no problem sucking at something in front of a large audience. After all, I'm here on Twitch doing SQL Server stuff. But I find it really, I don't mind getting my rear end kicked. Well, I mean, that's what's happening now, is I have like a 50% success rate of getting out as a survivor. And I'm starting to play as a killer as well. I'm starting to play as a killer. For those of you who played Dead by Daylight, I play as the Wraith, who's known as the Ding Dong Killer. He's unseen most of the time, like sneaks around all the time, almost invisible, but not really invisible. You can see him. There is a different joke there. And I was tempted to make it, but I was like, no, not quite. He sneaks around kind of sort of invisible, and then when he actually wants to try to kill somebody, he has to uncloak, and it makes this ding-dong doorbell noise. I think that's so hilarious because it injects a part of humor about the whole thing. I don't actually want to kill people. I just want to have a lot of fun scaring the hell out of them. And I try not to swear on here, but which is going to present a huge problem. Those of you who know me in real life, I swear a lot. And when I game, I also swear a lot. So I'm going to try to have to figure out how to gradually censor myself. And surely the champagne will not help. But so anyway, he is. He actually is. Well, I guess no, Ghostface. I'm not sure that Freddy is. Or Jason from Friday the 13th. I don't know why I said Freddy. I'm thinking Friday the 13th. I don't know that Jason is. There's Ghostface. There's Michael Myers is another one who's in there. Starlight says, wait, there are database administrators that don't swear. The catch with it is that people will watch my streams, watch the recordings of them on YouTube at work, and so, or with family members around. So I try to be vaguely safe for work. Plus, I have sponsors like the fine folks over at Redgate. Over at Redgate, they put out their State of the Database Monitoring Report, which has no swear words in it at all. You can go find out what thousands of database administrators think about their database monitoring tools and what kinds of things they're monitoring, what kinds of problems that they run into over at brentozar.com/go/report. You will be so excited that you will swear. That's totally not true. No one's going to swear. Although, I mean, there have been moments where I've looked at what we... Oh, I don't have the chat up on this window, and I totally need to add that. Hold on a second here. Let's add that back in so that y'all can chat in on this window. There have been a lot of moments where I've looked at this report, and I've been like, how the bleep are we still worried about disk space in the year 2021? It's so frustrating that we still, in this day and age, need to monitor for stuff like running out of disk space, like SQL Server agent failing, like long-running agent jobs. There's so many things that I'm just frustrated that the product doesn't have built in this day and age. It's utterly unbelievable. Well, it is believable, but it's inconceivable. I don't think this word means what you think it means. So you'll probably have moments like that too as you read the report over at brentozar.com/go/report. Now, back over here. Why did it do that? Oh, it moved over here. Okay, all right. I'm still learning how some of my keyboard shortcuts work over on the Stream Decks. So if you watch the instant replay, if you watch the recording of this over on YouTube, let me know if you play Dead by Daylight. Shoot me an email over at brentozar.com. Click contact up at the top, and we will put a group together to play it and go from there. I think it would be kind of fun. Or even if you just want to learn to play it and get started. I am only like a week into it. I still suck pretty bad, but it was really addictive, especially when there are two of us in the same room. When there are two of us in the same room and we're walking each other through stuff. So, all right. Well, the sun is setting here in San Diego. I'm going to go sit out on the balcony, and true story, I'm going to look at gaming laptop deals to see if any are still available too. Oh, wow. When you say I just play pinball at bars for now, it's amazing that you can get into bars in this day and age with COVID, and B, put your hands on the pinball machine that everybody's been touching so much. So make sure to wash your hands. But I will see y'all on the next office hours. Adios, everybody.